Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm Alfredo Brown, joined as always by Dave Kluge. Today, we are doing what could possibly be the worst episode of this show ever. So you're going to want to stick around. We're going to keep this one short. We're doing our rest of season tight end rankings here before week 6. And this is the rankings. It's kind of like whose line is it anyways, where the ranks don't matter and none of it really matters because it's tight end, Dave.
Yeah, talk about a great show start. Way to go, Alfredo. We talk about
You're
that
welcome.
attention getter. We want to make sure we're providing, high value information. But no, this is like you said, the worst episode ever. We talked about it before we started recording, and I said, how do we stretch this show more than 12 minutes? We are talking about tight ends, which is a wasteland right now. Like, how are we possibly supposed to talk about the tight end landscape for more than a few minutes? Because we could do this ranking show a week from now, and I'm sure every tight end would be in a different spot. Like, we are so reactive to the position the way that it is right now. It's just it's been tough out there. The one bit of solace I continue to find when discussing the tight end landscape this year is that if you drafted a tight end early, you're not alone. I mean, there were 8 tight ends that were going off the board within the top 6 rounds. So the reality is if you're in a 12-team league, 8 of the 12 people in your league probably reached within the top 6 rounds for a tight end. Then you had David Njoku, Jake Ferguson going shortly after. I mean, now with the benefit of hindsight, clearly waiting on tight end was the best way to do it this year, but nobody did. So everybody's kind of in the same boat this year, trying to figure it out as we go along.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a bunch of the landmines out there, the Evan Ingram, David Njoku. I mean, there are guys that have Mark Andrews that have fallen way down in the rankings. But then for everyone that didn't necessarily wait or kind of took a tight end in the middle rounds and you got Brock Bowers, you're sitting pretty. And that's we're going to break all this down in a second. We were going to have a special guest today, Joey Wright. Dave, Joey has communicated to you, obviously, with the hurricane incoming to Florida. He is in Central Florida, so he's right there in that cone of uncertainty, I believe is what it's called. The eye of the storm is headed right for him. He let you know. What was it that Joey wanted you to let the folks here at the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show know?
Well, first of all, I want to say that Joey is great when it comes to tight end analysis. That's something he's
Yes.
really kind of found his groove on throughout the years. Really good at identifying the sleepers and weekly rankings, draft rankings, all that sort of stuff. But he wanted us to let the audience know that he wanted to be here today, but he and his family are preparing for the impact of Hurricane Milton. So anybody who's been watching this show knows that this is our typical guest show, these rest of season positional ranking episodes that we do. And Joey will be back with us in a month when we do our second rest of season tight end episode.
Hopefully that episode's going to matter a lot more. Because Dave, right now the vibes are atrocious down here. I'm in South Florida. Hurricane's coming. We're talking about tight ends. Let's just get into this. Let's keep this episode short. You guys that are watching right now, be sure give this video a like, comment down below, maybe with some of your questions about your tight ends, maybe some players that you want to be trading for at the tight end position. We'll do our best to get back to you guys. And if you're listening on the audio side, be sure after you're done with this 15-minute episode, give this a 5-star review on either Apple or Spotify. Dave, we're going to start at the top because honestly, it makes no sense to start at tight end 24 because we're going to lose people immediately. So let's start at the top.
I can't wait to overpromise or underpromise and overdeliver like we often do on this show. And get ready, 16 minutes of tight end discussion coming your way.
Here we go. Here we go. All right. So in tier number 1, we've got in no particular order, Travis Kelce and Brock Bowers, because you and I have them sort of flip flopped here. You have Brock Bowers as your tight end 1, Kelce is 2. I have Kelce as 1. You have Bowers as 2. For me, it's really just as simple as the Raiders are in a mess right now offensively and with the quarterback position. And even though Mahomes hasn't been phenomenal for fantasy and Travis Kelce hasn't been great for fantasy, those targets are starting to pick up. We do get the news about Rashee Rice and his season. So I'm willing to just keep Travis Kelce. This is such a backward season that if all the new stuff that we thought was going to work out didn't, let's just go back to what we know and what has worked. And sure, Travis Kelce, my tight end 1.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, we're really splitting hairs here, talking about our tight end 1 and our tight end 2. I mean, we
Right.
both have them in this top tier for a reason. I think these are kind of the difference makers at the position. For me, I would just prefer Brock Bowers, somebody who is young and on the ascent, as opposed to Travis Kelce, somebody who is old on the decline. I mean, you see him out there with that haircut and that wannabe cop mustache, and he just doesn't even look like a football player at this point. Like he looks like in a movie you'd be watching. The guy who's trying to reestablish his career at like 42 years old. He just doesn't look like a football player right now. And maybe he can get better. Maybe they're trying to preserve him until the postseason, but he looks slow. He looks clunky. This just isn't the player that we've seen in years past. On the flip side, you got Brock Bowers, who is making these unbelievable plays after the catch, making contested catches, getting touches out of the backfield, and he is the tight end one right now in PPR scoring. So I'm going to lean slightly towards Brock Bowers, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if when we do the show a month from now, Travis Kelsey has reestablished his reign as the tight end one now without Rashi Rice, with no Hollywood Brown. They're going to have to feed him the ball.
That's the thing. It's with no Rasheed Rice. It's been 16 receptions over the last 2 weeks. And by the way, he's doing this without scoring any touchdowns. The Chiefs are 4-0. The vibes there are great. The offense seems to be humming along despite Juju Smith Schuster is out here having
Oh
a
my
monster
gosh.
game last night for the
Yeah.
Chiefs. Kareem Hunt, like what year is it? It doesn't matter with Patrick Mahomes. And that's kind of where my head is still at is that as much as we're getting excited about Brock Bowers, I think giving him his flowers and putting him at tight end two is more than reasonable here.
Giving
Let's
Bowers his flowers. I like it.
Oh,
And
flowers for
I
Bowers.
just need to say we do our waiver show before Monday Night Football.
Mm,
Can I just totally put you on the spot? I know this is our
yeah.
tight end show, but Juju Smith-Schuster, waiver wire, is he a guy that you're like really clamoring for, or do you think it was kind of maybe not something we could anticipate going forward? He was definitely in the Rashi Rice role, but this is Juju Smith-Schuster, the guy Albert Breer told us is one hit away from his knee exploding.
You know what? I'm willing to throw some money on him because as we saw, it's not really Justin Watson. It's not really Justin Ross. Doesn't no
Yeah.
matter what name we throw out there. If Hollywood Brown comes back, I'm throwing some money on him. Why not? Especially if you are the guy that did lose some players to injury at the wide receiver spot. I mean, because this is such a simple role, we don't need him to be this incredibly explosive player. If he's coming down with 3 or 4 catches in a game for 40, 50 yards, that's really all we need. Like for
Yeah.
me, all of this just keeps going back to Patrick Mahomes, the fact that he's the one leading
Yep.
that offense. And I know this is the most basic analysis, but that's really all it comes down to. Don't overthink it. Don't overspend. But yeah, I think he's definitely fantasy viable at this point.
There's how we stretch this from 15 to 16 minutes talking about Juju Smith-Schuster. All right.
I hate
who
what you're
who
doing.
might just be 2 or 3 years away from being a tight end himself.
All right. Man, he's only a few years removed from being the dynasty wide receiver one. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh,
What a time,
I remember it. I
what a time to
remember
be
it.
alive. All right, let's go to our next tier here, where we have tied at tight end three, Trey McBride and George Kittle, where you and I had the rankings flip flopped there. And then kind of the de facto number five who sneaks in here, despite having a honestly pretty cheeks season so far, Sam Laporta
Yeah.
sneaking into this tier here. So it's Trey McBride, George Kittle, Sam Laporta. Dave, I ask this knowing that there's more context to the answer, but are these guys kind of all locked out of the tight end one overall conversation, or can any of these guys really just make their way to the top at this point?
There's still a lot of season left, and here we are, through the first 5 weeks, we think that Travis Kelsey and Brock Bowers are the guys giving you a huge advantage. Wouldn't surprise me one bit if one of these guys slips in. George Kittle missed week 3, but if you look at the 4 games that he has played this year, he's averaging 16 points per game, more than any other tight end. So I definitely can't say that George Kittle is locked out of the tight end one conversation when he is currently the per game tight end one. Sam Laporta is the one that scares me, and we may not have nailed the tight end position this offseason. I don't think anybody really was telling you to fade the top 8 guys, but we did say that like paying up for Sam Laporta was just a really tough pill to swallow, considering so much of his production came last year from touchdowns, and now all of a sudden those touchdowns are drying up, and he is not the player he was. In addition to his touchdowns drying up, we've also got the running game looking better than ever, where David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are just going to be the engine that churns this Detroit offense. And then we've also got the emergence of Jamison Williams, a guy who isn't going to be a huge target earner, but he is going to have games where he pulls 9 to 12 targets. And when that happens, Monroe St. Brown and Sam Laporta, they are going to struggle. So I think with the added depth now in Detroit, them having more playmakers, the touchdown cologne, as you like to say, starting to wear off a little bit for Sam Laporta. I've got him as tight end 5. You've got him as tight end 6. And really that's last year's production that we're holding on to, because this year there hasn't really been anything too exciting that we've seen from Florida.
Yeah, for me, it's not even so much the touchdowns or the fantasy points. It's like just dig even just one small layer deeper that he's not even getting the same targets that he was last year. He doesn't even appear to be the first read guy in the offense as much. Now, that is not to say that this can't change coming out of the bye week, that there aren't things that get corrected and that this offense does take a turn in the right direction. Jared Goff can improve. There's a lot that can change, but Dave, I think you laid it out pretty easily. There's just enough weapons on this team that Sam Laporta is not going to be the guy getting the volume, and we're going to have to end up being a little touchdown dependent on him.
No, just
The
kind
guy,
of big picture, I think something that's
yeah,
happening here, the reason tight ends are struggling so much this year, in the past, we've seen the reasons that tight ends can do well is because they would line up in line or in the slot. They'd get matched up with a linebacker, and they would have this huge mismatch where they would be able to outrun and outcatch linebackers. But now so many defenses are flipping either to a two high shell or to a nickel defense where they have five cornerbacks on the field. So now when these tight ends are matching up against cornerbacks, they don't have the same advantage they used to when they were lining up against a run stuffing linebacker.
right.
So I understand why NFL coaches were doing what they wanted to do, moving these tight ends out wide and in the slot and all over the formation. But we've seen it with Kyle Pitts. I mean, like last week, Kyle Pitts had his best game and he took a lot of those snaps in line. He was running seams right up the middle of the defense, getting matched up on linebackers and making his big plays. When you take these tight ends and you put them out wide and they're lined up against a cornerbacker, they aren't going to have that same mismatch advantage anymore. So I think last year was really this huge boom of young tight ends just dominating the NFL. And then early this year, teams said, well, let's go ahead and get the ball in these tight ends' hands more often. Defenses adjusted quickly. They aren't seeing that same advantage. So I don't want to say that like the tight end landscape is completely dead yet. We saw it last week with Kyle Pitts, and I think we're going to see more teams start to move their tight ends in a little bit so they get those mismatches on linebackers.
Wow. Dave, just give yourself a little applause, man. That was nice. That was nice. That was
Thank
very
you.
well done. Very well
Thank
done.
you.
You watching
Thank
this
you.
video or listening back at home, give Dave an applause. That was
Thank you.
well said. Let's move on to our next tier here of tight ends. Tier number 3. We're going to start it out with two players that are tied, same division, TJ Hawkinson and Tucker Kraft,
Oh,
tied
boy.
at tight end 6 here. And then Jake Ferguson, and at 9, Dalton Kincaid. So, Dave, there is a big difference here in rankings where I've got TJ Hawkinson as my tight end 5. I'm willing to put him ahead of Sam Laporta because how much worse can it get for anyone else? Honestly, we see
Fair.
what Sam Laporta is giving us. Like when TJ Hawkinson is back, I do fully expect him to be able to give us what Laporta's been giving us, if not better.
Yeah.
So honestly, I'm willing to put the Hawkinson up just as high as Kittle and McBride, and seeing how well this Vikings offense has played under Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell. I'm still very much in on TJ Hawkinson. If I'm the manager that has TJ Hawkinson that's been sitting on my IR, I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic. I'm maybe even looking to trade away the current tight end I have now to someone who's desperate so I can fill in some other spots on my roster.
Yeah, I mean, this is just kind of been the theme for this weekly show that we're doing when we discuss rest of season positional rankings. You're willing to be a little bit more bullish on the guys returning from injury. I am a little bit more trepidatious with some of these guys. TJ Hawkinson is a great player, no doubt about it, but this is a different looking Minnesota Vikings team than we've seen in the past now with Sam Darnold instead of Kirk Cousins. They've also got Jordan Addison there who looks healthy and has been playing great football. So the targets are going to get squeezed a little bit. We might not see the same volume overall that Kirk Cousins had, and we might see a smaller slice of the pie going Hawkinson's way now that Jordan Addison is there. So I understand the upside. And of all of the guys in here, I'd say that TJ Hawkinson has the highest upside because we've seen him perform like an elite tight end before, and we haven't seen it from anybody else in this tier. But man, the guy for me, when you start looking at value and opportunity to acquire, for me, it's Tucker Kraft. And we talked about him on yesterday's waiver show. We talked about him on last week's waiver show. We've talked about this guy a lot over the last few weeks, but what he's doing is mind blowing. I talked about George Kittle's 16 points per game over a 4 game sample so far this season. Tucker Kraft has a 3 game sample with Jordan Love, and he's averaging 15.9 points per game in those 3 games. So, you look at it on the season, Tucker Kraft is still the overall tight end 3, and he did that averaging 4 points per game in the 2 games that he had to play with Malik Willis. In the 3 games he's played with Jordan Love, he has been giving us elite performance. We're looking at this very ambiguous wide receiver room. We don't know where the touches are going to go on any given week, but we know that Tucker Kraft is their full-time tight end 1. He is 13th in the league in routes run. He is almost never asked to block. Luke Musgrave, the guy that we were worried about kind of jumping ahead of him going into this year, the guy who had better draft capital, better prospect profile, all that stuff, is now only on the field for 12 personnel. This looks like it's Tucker Kraft's team. And like we saw a lot of guys unexpectedly break out last year, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride. Tucker Kraft appears to be on that trajectory right now as a potential league winning tight end.
Yeah, actually, I realized I had Kraft a little bit too low in my rankings, so I moved him ahead of Jake Ferguson to be my tight end 7. So that would actually put Tucker Kraft as our tight end 6 overall, with Hawkinson as our tight end 7. And um, I do there's kind of like the good and the bad, right? Like this Packers team, you know who they are. They actually look now a lot like last year's Lions team, where you've got Jaden Reed in this Amon-Ra St. Brown role. You've got Romeo Dobbs is kind of in like the weird Josh Reynolds role where like
Yeah.
he's gonna get some touchdowns, he's gonna get some annoying passes. Christian Watson is there to make the big Jameson Williams play. You've got a decent running game, and then tight end. Sam Laporta, Tucker Kraft, 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. And
Oh boy.
this, like I've said before, he could end up being the straw that stirs the drink here. I mean, we're seeing Jordan Love has an affinity for Jaden Reed, but Tucker Kraft, man, like he's been coming on really hot these last 2 games here. Dave, 14 targets in the last couple games. I I start to question, are the touchdowns sustainable? Maybe it
Nope.
doesn't matter because the targets will remain sustainable. Right. Like
Yes.
he's not getting 3 touchdowns every two
Yeah.
games, right? But the targets can remain sustainable. And honestly, with how bad tight end is, that to me, like that's top 7 worthy.
Yeah. And you've got different types of tight ends. It's no surprise to anybody. You've got your Kyle Pitts, your tall, slender guy who's going to beat you with speed. You've got your TJ Hawkinson, who kind of fits in the Zach Ertz archetype for me. The guy who's going to run his routes 5 yards downfield, kind of be that safety blanket, catch the ball and fall over. And then you've got the Tucker Kraft archetype. And it's not the Tucker Kraft archetype. What it is it's the Rob Gronkowski archetype that Tucker Kraft fits into. A Mark Andrews type in his prime, a Travis Kelce guy who's going to catch the ball across the middle of the field, who is great after the catch. And that's the thing you don't see from a lot of other tight ends. Tucker Kraft isn't going to catch the ball and fall over. He's going to catch the ball and then he's going to run through a defender and then he's going to jump over another defender and then he's going to push a pile into the end zone. He is that type of difference maker on offense. And there's a lot of good players in Green Bay, but I don't think they have anybody who can do things after the catch that Tucker Kraft can besides Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed's going to do it with speed. Tucker Kraft is going to do it with grit and strength and just sheer willpower. So Tucker Kraft, man, a young player that really struggled to see the field last year because he was buried behind Luke Musgrave early in the season. An injury to Musgrave opened up the door. Tucker Kraft stepped through, and I don't think he's leaving that room.
Dave, there's one guy in this tier that I want to talk about because he was drafted pretty highly, and it's Dalton Kincaid,
I
who we
cry.
haven't we
I cry.
um man, it's we're seeing games where he is getting targets. We do see a 7 target game, a 6 target game. Like, it's starting to show up for him, but this last game also without Khalil Shakir and really with no one else stepping up in that wide receiver room. We did get a Keon Coleman touchdown, but what is it going to take for Dalton Kincaid to be the top target earner, and not just top target earner, but actually catching and getting targets that matter more, right? Because getting 6 or 7 targets sounds great in theory, and then you look and it's 2 catches for 34 yards, totally scoreless. That's not going to be helpful for fantasy. Is there a way that he actually becomes more valuable for fantasy? Do we have that faith going forward, or are we just kind of just done, like set the ships on fire and send him out for a Viking funeral?
I'm not panicking after what we saw last week. I did really like the usage that we saw last week, and the production wasn't there. Like you said, 2 catches for 34 yards, 6 targets. I actually thought he had more than 6 targets. It seemed like he was being used a lot more, but the targets last week were so valuable. His average target depth, the yardage that these targets were coming downfield, 16.3 yards downfield. To compare to what he's done throughout the rest of the season, in week 1, his average target depth was zero point 0.5 yards. In week 2, his average target depth was -2 yards. In week 3 and week 4, 8.8 and 7.3. And then for some reason in week 5, his usage just changed drastically and he started seeing these deep downfield. He's 12th in the league in unrealized air yards. He is 18th in the league in air yard share, and he's 7th in the league in target share. So the usage has been there. It's just been this weird situation where he and Josh Allen haven't been able to get on the same page. There was a throw last week that was Dalton Kincaid could have had a 75-yard touchdown, and Josh Allen just underthrew it a little bit, and they were unable to connect. I still have faith in Dalton Kincaid because the usage is there. This is a guy who's still lining up out of the slot. He's drawing targets. If there's any opportunity to buy low on Dalton Kincaid, I'm taking that. We're starting to panic about a lot of these guys, Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts, expectedly. But I think about of all the guys who have underperformed at this point in the season, I think Dalton Kincaid is the most likely to bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, out of this, the tier gets so ugly. Not just the tier, but I mean, the tier of tight ends that we need to bounce back. And a lot of these guys are going to be in the next few tiers that we talk about. So let's move on to the next one. Tier number 4 here. This is great. At tight ends 10 and 11, so they're tied. Taysom Hill and Kyle Pitts. They're essentially the same person.
And if Kyle Pitts, or I'm sorry, if Taysom Hill was healthy, he'd be much higher. I mean, it's the broken ribs right now are the only reason I'm low on Taysom Hill. I mean, we saw this guy 15% of the team snaps and he finishes the tight end 2 weeks ago. Like the touches that he gets are so valuable, whether he's throwing touchdowns or whether he's getting goal line work or whether he's catching balls in the flat. His usage makes him very valuable in fantasy. So if he was healthy, if he wasn't dealing with these broken ribs, he'd probably be my tight end 7. I think I'd be willing to put him ahead of Dalton Kincaid, but we don't know if he's going to miss 1 week. We don't know if he's going to miss a month. Broken ribs are tough to play through, and especially with the physicality that Taysom Hill plays with, we might not see him at 100%. So that's really the only thing. As for Kyle Pitts, we saw him bounce back last week. We saw much better usage. Hopefully that can translate into future games. The only issue is for Kyle Pitts to finally have a fantasy relevant week, we need Kirk Cousins to throw for 500 yards. Kirk Cousins isn't throwing for 500 yards every week. So, like,
Right.
if that's the out for Kyle Pitts, is that like, hey, well, when Kirk Cousins throws for 500 yards, you can get a tight end 1 week from Kyle Pitts. It's not going to happen week in and week out. And the usage hasn't been there. It's been disappointing. There's room to believe that it can get better, but Kyle Pitts, I think I'm finally willing to take my L on him.
It's over. It's Jover for Kyle Pitts?
I don't know if I could say it's completely over yet, but that L is looking me right in the face. And I want to say, like, this is a guy, like, I wasn't crazy about Kyle Pitts coming in as a rookie. I thought that he was getting way overdrafted, but then you start looking at the usage metrics and the air yard share and all these sorts of things, and you say, he's appropriately valued because he's got a sky high ceiling, but it's been 4 years now, and that ceiling has not manifested itself yet. So Kyle Pitts, fun player. He's finally on a good team with a good quarterback, but I need to see it for more than 1 out of 5 games before I can confidently say he's a rest of season tight end 1.
We started with Taysom Hill in this tier, and Dave, are the Saints is the Saints offense just actually not good? Like, is that it? Can we confidently say they're not good when they don't have Taysom Hill? Because it's been such a tale of two halves so far for the season. Derek Carr has these just absolutely brutal moments. And I'm sitting there watching the game last night and thinking, are there fans of Derek Carr? Like, are there Saints fans that as soon as he became the quarterback there went and bought the jersey? Because I don't know that there's been a team that he's been on where people are like, oh, good, we're set. We're set at quarterback. And we just keep seeing it over and over, man. Like we had 2 weeks where we're like, oh, Saints offense looks legit. And now they're
Yeah,
right back.
because they played the Panthers and the Cowboys, 2 terrible defenses. Like, yeah, with the benefit of hindsight, now that we have more data on these teams, it's like, oh, they beat the crap out of the Panthers like they should have, and like every other team has so far. I mean, it's not, and even the Cowboys, I think that was the really surprising one when they won 44-19 in week 2, and we were like, wait, hold on, the Saints team might be for real. And then a few more weeks we go, actually that Cowboys defense isn't very good. I mean, they struggled against the Eagles. They hung in there with the Falcons, but lost that game. And then they just looked abysmal yesterday. And really, I think what it came down to is like Derek Carr was really feeling himself And then he had that just vintage Derek Carr play where he was like scrambling. He felt the pressure and he just kind of closed his eyes and just chucked a moon ball up in the air and it got intercepted. And I was like, that's
It's
it.
so funny, man.
That's the
It's so
Derek Carr that
funny.
I know and remember. And I think that that is just going to, start to bleed into future games.
Derek Carr is just out there playing jackpot. Did you ever play that game as a kid?
We
Like,
called
that's
it
all he's
500,
doing.
but
Yeah,
yes,
he's
yeah,
just
yeah.
going 500. You ever play with the one kid that, like, makes up rules? 500, and then what's the thing where they, like a bomb or something like that, where they just, like, they make it up mid-air, and it's like, "Oh, no, you
Yeah,
caught it, you're out."
yeah, and,
Not
like,
playing with you anymore.
yeah, all sorts of weird rules. I can't remember the rules of 500. I remember there was, like, a
It's
there
because there
there were a
were
lot
no
of
rules.
weird.
There were no
Yeah,
rules. It's a
just
child
made them
it's
up
a
on the
kid's
fly.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Uno. There's not really rules despite what Google says. Kids just make it up as they go. It's been a That's been fun to learn about children. Also, if you have a Derek Carr jersey, can you please email us fantasyshow@footballguys.com? I just want to see the picture of it. I don't believe that there's anyone that has a Derek Carr jersey.
I bet Dylan has a Derek Carr Raiders jersey. Our
Derek
guy
Carr, I want a
Dylan,
Derek
social
Carr
media?
Saints jersey. I want a
Yeah,
Derek
let me
Carr
know.
Saints jersey because the Raiders drafted him. Like, there was a time where you could have hope. His rookie
Yeah.
season. When the Saints got him, I don't know. I wonder, like, they always talk about the most bought jerseys on
I'm looking it up
shop.nfl.com.
right now. My guess is that Rashid Shaheed has sold more jerseys this year than Derek Carr has.
Like, I have to assume it's probably Kamara, Olave, Shaheed. There's got to be some defensive players, maybe even an offensive lineman or two, and then Derek Carr.
I would guess that Drew Brees has sold more jerseys this year in New Orleans than Derek Carr has.
A Dennis Allen hoodie. All right, let's go to. Oh, we got to finish up this
Oh,
tier
yeah. Dallas
at
Goedert.
the end. At the end of this tier, Dallas Goddard, Pat Fryermuth. These guys are just basically, are they automatic starters each week, or do you still have times where you're going to be looking for streaming replacements for them?
I think Dallas Goedert, what we saw is that when A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith can't play, Dallas
Right.
Goedert's awesome. 27 points. Last week, no A.J. Brown, 13.5 points. But in the two games where he was the third option behind A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, we got 7.1 and 6.8. So I think that with Dallas Goedert, you know what you're getting. Like if he's the number two option on the team, if Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown can't play, you're firing him up as a top three option. And if A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are both out there, which we expect them to be in week 6 after the bye, then I don't know if Dallas Goedert's startable. The issue is I don't know if a lot of people have better options. So, like, if I've
Right.
got Dallas Goedert, hopefully I picked up Tucker Craft last week. If not, I'm making a big splash this week. You know, I don't know what else to do. You're going to get some highs and you're going to get some lows with Dallas Goddard. The good thing is that they're kind of predictable. But if I'm rostering a guy like Dallas Goddard, I definitely want to have a secondary option so I can kind of stream based on matchups.
I think that's going to be what it is. You're going to have to try to assume the game script for the Eagles. Is this going to be sort of a pass heavy game? Are they going to have an early lead? What's going to happen? The Eagles have been a little bit harder to predict this year. But we talked about those streaming options. Maybe there are some other guys in this next tier here. Let's take a look at them, Dave. At 14, we've got Isaiah Likely. And then tied, we have Mark Andrews and Evan Ingram. Wow. That hurt to say
Uh,
out loud.
outside of
For
the
that,
top 12,
yeah, it's gross.
outside of the
It's
top
gross.
15.
And
Ugh.
what's worse is that right behind them is Colby Parkinson and Tyler Conklin. That's where we're at as a society. And then
Colby
at the end of
Parkinson is
this,
going to be short-lived, but his usage without Cooper Cup and Puka Nacua has truly been elite. Like, and the
yeah,
problem
all
is,
it took was everyone getting injured on the offense.
right? And now they've got a bye, and it sounds like Cooper Cup is coming back after this Week 6 bye, so this could be the end of Colby Parkins' Linsanity run. But man, the usage he's gotten over the last couple of weeks has been really, really nice. By Linsanity run, I mean averaging like
Colby
6.5
Parkinson.
points per game.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
But it's bad
And
out here, man.
I was trying to think of like a
Uh,
Parkinsonity. No, it doesn't work. But yeah, no, not at
I'll put
6
some
points a
respect on
game.
his name. He's averaging 7.1 points per game. Much better than I expected at 6.5.
I promised you guys at the beginning this would be the worst episode ever of this show. It's either worst or best. I'm not sure at this point. It's somewhere in there. By the way, last tight end in this tier, Cole Kmet. Just wanted to throw that out there. So, is there anyone in this tier out of Likely, Andrews, Ingram, Parkinson, Conklin, Komet that can have a surprising rest of season that we go, dang, that guy was just out there on waivers or has been sitting on my bench and I dropped them or I just threw them in as an extra trade piece. Is there someone in here that we go, that was a mistake? I should have had this player on my roster ready to go for the rest of the season.
I think it might be Mark Andrews. And I know it's been awful
Okay.
so far this year. I wrote about Mark Andrews yesterday in my 3 up, 3 down article, and I wrote about Mark Andrews obviously trending down. There's nothing about his game that is trending up right now, but I think this is something where he had this car accident in August that wasn't really widely reported. I mean, it was reported by like major media outlets, but it was in the heart of preseason and draft season. I think that people were so gung ho about drafting and so locked into their takes from the offseason that they didn't really budge. I checked, his ADP didn't really move at all. And I think the reason it didn't move is because right after this car accident, John Harbaugh came out and addressed the media and said it was, quote, a minor thing. Well, Mark Andrews missed the next 16 practices. He said it was a very serious injury. He missed 16 practices leading up to their week 1 kickoff. I don't know. I'm starting to think that maybe this car accident wasn't a minor thing. And I think it's really that, he's coming back from the broken fibula and the tightrope surgery, which we've seen has kind of zapped the explosiveness from players the year after. You couple that up with this probably not a minor thing car accident that happened in August and really bled all the way up into the season's kickoff. It's been tough for Mark Andrews, and I think we probably should have paid closer attention to that in the preseason, the tightrope procedure and the car accident. I don't think his season's over, but what we've seen so far is not the Mark Andrews of old, and we finally saw last week a game where the Ravens found themselves in a negative game script and they were forced to throw the ball, and there was some life in Mark Andrews, but at the end of the day, Charlie Kolar was involved, Isaiah Likely was involved. They combined for 3 touchdowns. None went Mark Andrews' way. I understand why people are panicking now. And I'm not advising to pick him up because it is so risky, especially in your shallow leagues where bench spots are very valuable. But it wouldn't surprise me if come week 8, 9, 10, 11, sometime later in the season, we see this page kind of flip, and all of a sudden Mark Andrews does look like the player he's looked like in years past. I think a lot of what we're seeing right now, the lack of production, the lack of usage, is because of this car accident that he got in August that really wasn't that widely reported and kind of skirted underneath the radar during a really busy time of the offseason.
So, hate to be a party pooper, but I'm going to poop. I don't think anyone here is going to have a great rest of season. I honestly, short answer is like, I just don't see how any of these guys, Cole Kmet, he's kind of battling for targets there. Tyler Conkin, the Jets are a mess right now. They just fired Robert Sala. There's reports that they might get Devontae Adams in a trade. Colby Parkinson is on a insanity run. Uh, Evan Ingram, we don't know when he's coming back, and it's a hamstring injury. Now you've got Brenton Strange out there who's looked good, and the Jags just kind of suck. And then the two Ravens tight ends that are going to be eating at each other now add Charlie Kohler to the mix. I don't know that any of these guys have anything going for them rest of season. The only guy I can maybe make the argument for is Evan Ingram, but he's going to have to be healthy, and the Jaguars offense is going to have to be better because right now he may end up being third on the team in targets because of what Brian Thomas Jr. has been able to do.
Oh, Brian Thomas Jr. isn't giving that wide receiver 1 roll back.
No,
He looks
no.
fantastic. Christian Kirk is still going to get his. And, our good friend Andrew Cooper, kind of the tight end whisperer, talks about this all the time. Like, in order to be a top 5 tight end in fantasy, you need to be the second option on your team. Like, so rarely does a guy end up being the third or fourth option on his team and give you a top 5 finish. And that's what Evan Ingram's been for the last 2 years. And sure enough, he was the tight end 5 and the tight end 2 because he was second on the team in targets behind Christian Kirk. But now with Brian Thomas in the mix, I just don't think we can project that type of work to go his way. So, the Evan Ingram, what we got the last couple of years was really, really nice, but I don't expect to see that this year, even when he is healthy.
All right, let's go to the next tier here at tight end 20. We've got Dalton Schultz, 21, David Njoku, 22, Hunter Henry, who, by the way, is a top target on his team. Doesn't matter. Tight end 23, Zach Ertz, tight end 24, K. Dotton. I'm I'm going to ask this question because the question I had before was, do any of these tight ends matter? And the quick answer is no. Maybe in life, but not for fantasy football. But the question here is going to be about the biggest name in this tier, and that's David Njoku. He's getting an MRI. He already had an injury, a high ankle, I believe it was. Comes back, hurts the knee. Now he's getting an MRI. We've got no update as of this recording. There's been speculation, but nobody knows anything right now. Dave, before the show, you said he is just entirely off your radar for the rest of season. Is there anything here that could change your mind on that?
Yeah, a clean MRI.
Okay.
If we get the report today that like MRI came back and he's healthy, he's probably around tight end 14 or 15 for me right now.
Okay.
But
Okay.
was dealing with a high ankle sprain and then the knee injury after that. When the first thing they say about a knee injury is we can't comment on it until we get the MRI results, that's a major red flag for me. So that's really the only caution that I have now with David Njoku. If it comes back clean and they say he's missing 2 or 3 weeks, he's inside my top 20. If it comes back clean enough that he's not missing any time, he's inside my top 15. But right now, with the uncertainty given when we are recording on Tuesday morning, not having the full puzzle, I'm terrified of David Njoku.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Dave, I have nothing to add about this final tier because it's not fantasy relevant and I don't want to bore the people at home.
Are you sure? We don't want to talk about Jordan Akins or Zach Ertz, Elijah Higgins, Noah
No,
Gray,
I'm good.
the heir
No, no, I'm
apparent
good.
for Travis
No,
Kelsey?
I'm good.
No?
No, I'm good.
What about
No, I'm
Theo
good.
Johnson?
Oh, you know what? You know what's a fun name? Eric All. That's
There you
fun.
go. Okay,
The
we got
Bengals.
there.
There
Yeah,
we
yeah.
there we go,
That's
kids.
about all we've got to say about Eric All. He's on a good
Yeah,
offense. He's young. He can
he's
pull up
athletic.
targets. Yeah.
Dynasty target.
Yeah. If they trade away Mike Gesicki, who knows? Eric All could be a top 20 tight end.
There what an awful way to end the show, but there we are. That's it for us. I've got hurricane stuff going on here in South Florida, so I will not be on the show with Dave tomorrow. We're still figuring out that final plan, but Dave, it's right now we're looking like you might be back, maybe with a special guest. We'll see. We'll find out.
Special guest I had in mind, unfortunately, can't make it happen tomorrow. I don't want
So
to
does
take
that
the
mean
day
no
off.
show tomorrow?
Might be. Maybe
All
it'll
right.
just
Well,
be me giving you my trade target. I don't know. We'll figure something out. Stay safe out there, Alfredo, though. I'm actually
yeah,
going to be in Florida next week. Hoping, it's kind of a weird time, like planning a trip in
you're
new
here
place.
at a lovely time of year post hurricane. Let me tell you.
Yeah, starting to get a little nervous. I fly out a little bit later. My wife flies out on Monday. I fly out next Friday, the 18th. So hoping that it'll be a nice, pleasant trip. But yeah, we got a lot of people on Football Guy staff that are based in Florida. You, Joey Wright, Matt Carey. So praying for all you guys. Hoping you all stay safe over the next couple of days.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you. And to anyone else that might be dealing with this hurricane here in Florida or anywhere along the Gulf Coast, you're in our thoughts and prayers as well. Hoping you guys all stay safe, and hopefully we will be back together on Thursday, ready to record another show for you guys and give you your week 6 starts of the week. As always, for myself, for Dave, for everyone here at Football Guys, we want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through. We'll see you next time. Adios.